my name is Kristen Cambell, and like all of you, I am here today to contribute to supporting American democracy by building a coordinated national strategy for healthy self-governance. And I think we're all here, probably, because we believe that we need one. We all know why. We know that trust in our democratic institutions is at an all-time low, while partisanship and division are deepening across our nation every day. But call me crazy, I'm still hopeful. I'm not here to minimize the challenges that we face. They're vast, their roots are deep, and the implications for our nation are far-reaching. I also believe that the solution lies in that very phrase, our nation. We're here today because many Americans do not identify with these words. Whatever the reasons for that disconnect, what we hear time and again is that many people do not feel that our democratic structures and systems represent them. They do not feel the sense of ownership, responsibility, and commitment that drives civic action. And that disconnect has reverberated throughout the landscape of our American democracy. Democracy is not a given. It may have been given to us, a republic, that is, if we can keep it, as Benjamin Franklin challenged us. But keeping it requires that we exercise responsibility along with rights. In a recent piece for The Atlantic, Yoni Applebaum said, "To stop the rot afflicting American government, Americans are going to have to get back into the habit of democracy." I'd like to talk today about what that might take from all of us in order to make that happen. I have the privilege of leading PACE, Philanthropy for Active Civic Engagement, a network of funders committed to restoring active citizenship as the cornerstone of our Republican democracy. For many, civic engagement equates to voting, voter engagement, political reform, and advocacy. For us, civic engagement is all of those things, but it's also service, leadership development, deliberative dialogue, charitable giving, and much more. Most importantly, it's the thread that ties all of those things together, feeling part of something larger than yourself. It's a sense of responsibility to a community that you're part of, and that sense of commitment requires a sense of connection, and that's where we need to start. PACE defines civic engagement broadly because it's in this sense of responsibility to something bigger that democracy's roots begun to grow. In the late 1800s, Alexis de Tocqueville observed that voluntary associations were unique to our young democracy and held the power to enable organic connections to happen. He reflected on what happens when you allow people to associate freely in everything. They end up seeing the universal connections in their actions and the unique ways in which people can achieve what they aim to achieve, and they naturally feel inspired to do more. They see how change happens by being part of it. This reflection from generations ago is supported by civic engagement data today. We know that engagement begets engagement. Whether you're volunteering for the PTA at a local LGBTQ community center or a church group, whether you're coaching a Little League team or mentoring a young person in your community, low-barrier voluntary civic engagement activities have the power to improve your quality of life and the quality of life of the people around you. Volunteers are more likely than those that don't serve to find jobs. Communities with high civic health have better employment and economic outcomes, and an individual's sense of purpose and connection are correlated with positive physical and mental health, as well as personal happiness and satisfaction. It's how trust and cohesion are built. To wit, it's real, the impact is real, it's tangible, and it matters. Small-scale actions like helping neighbors or volunteering are available to everyone and can be the most meaningful way to get people into that habit of democracy that we've been talking about, by building a sense of ownership and connection that civic engagement requires. People who see themselves in all aspects of community life, not just government, feel that they have a responsibility to act. And it's that sense of belonging and commitment that makes civic engagement, and therein a healthy self-governance, possible. So when we think about the strategy for self-governance, I posit that expanding our definition and our vision of civic engagement is step one. But another truth that we must contend with is the reality that it's easy to distrust and to avoid altogether that which you do not see yourself in. And if people don't trust and therefore don't participate in government, then the possibility of a representative democracy falters. We won't have a democracy, we'll have a democracy of the people who show up. This is a cyclical problem that we have to disrupt, and voting and voter mobilization efforts are part of the answer, but they're only part of the story about the lasting and sustainable elements of social connection and personal engagement. Therefore, expanding the mechanisms for meaningful engagement between citizens and government is a necessary step number 2. Absolutely, voting and voter and electoral engagement are critical, but elections are episodic. In the grand scheme, they can be revolutionary, and paradoxically, their impact can be limited. Elected officials need to hear more than just a silent vote from their constituents. In order to realize healthy self-governance, we must also think about a more robust way for people to engage with their elected officials on a regular and ongoing basis. This can mean engaging in activities like participatory budgeting, citizens' assembly or citizens' initiative reviews, participation in public meetings, advocacy, marches and rallies, the list goes on. Americans can vote to affect government, but they're yearning for more to do. Participating in politics and engaging with government beyond the ballot box is the only way to ensure our government is consistently representative of and accountable to our voices. So that's step 2. But this thought experiment presumes that restoring the foundational elements of our democracy relies on 2 things we know: that engagement will inspire more engagement, and that meaningful interaction with our elected officials is a natural and necessary element of representative democracy. But both of these suggestions presume that people have the skills and the support they need to become effective civic actors, which brings me to step 3, civic learning. Civic learning represents the range of experiences that prepare people for informed and engaged participation in civic life and the democratic process. These experiences can occur in classrooms or in out-of-school contexts and at all stages of life. What's important is that they happen and that all Americans have access to these experiences. Young people with access to robust civic learning opportunities are much more likely to be civically engaged throughout their lives. We also know that there are stark disparities in access to civic learning opportunities, and that many of those disparities occur along lines of race and class. Those 2 factors together mean the current reality of our nation's civic education system is reinforcing inequalities that are driving our society today. We know that democracy is a process, not just an outcome. It's also a skill, and it's our responsibility to ensure that our nation's young people and all people have the tools and support to build that skill, as well as the knowledge and dispositions that go part and parcel with those skills. We cannot practice self-governance if we do not teach its mechanisms and instill its values in our young people. PACE's institutional members, which are 50 strong and counting, represent a broad spectrum of approaches to civic engagement. Several of them are here today. In fact, you heard from one of them already at the Democracy Fund. What brings us together is a belief that America will be healthier, more resilient, more productive, and more successful if our democracy is strong and if the office of citizen is treated as central to how it functions. I would suggest that civic engagement might look a little bit different for everyone in this room, and perhaps for every member of our democracy. But expanding our vision to make space for everyone is the only way to ensure that the democracy we build represents everyone. Americans need to see themselves in all aspects of civic life and feel they have the responsibility to act, the right to do so, and the skills to support them in that process. This political moment has created both a sense of urgency and concern, as well as a tremendous opportunity. Our democracy has proven resilient throughout history, but we have to double down on our commitment to self-governance if that's going to continue to be the case. I've offered 3 steps that I see as integral to a healthy and effective self-governance: expanding our vision of civic engagement to ensure inclusion of voluntary small-scale activities, expanding mechanisms for meaningful engagement between citizens and elected officials, and ensuring that all of our nation's people have access to robust civic learning opportunities and the tools and support they need to become active citizens for life. I stand by that plan. And I will add to it that I think it's important to think about the strategy we're building today as a spectrum rather than just a laundry list. It should be a holistic plan that includes the ideas our colleagues are articulating today. So I'm really glad the Bridge Alliance is bringing us together in this comprehensive way. But I will also say, moving forward, I hope this effort incorporates, I hope this effort incorporates a larger demographic and sociographic diversity of voices in order to ensure the plan itself is representative of the voices, experiences, and perspectives of the members of our diverse democracy. We have the opportunity to model the type of representation and participation that we expect from our democratic systems and leaders to adhere to, and I hope we all take our own individual and collective responsibility to heart in that respect. Thank you.